This happens everywhere, all the time. Oprah walks in, and women go into a frenzy. And perhaps the ones who are the most fanatic today are the ones who are outside looking in. And it's tough on the outside, what with all the sign holding and more sign holding. Police even scuffle with a would-be scalper. It's definitely tough on the outside.
I've been on eBay. A man attempted to fraud, exploit me for money.
Honestly, how can people get so caught up in this Oprah mania?
Oh, I saw you on the news.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did. Great.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Oprah watches me.
Yeah,
See?
Yeah. Well, Oprah does come to Denver with a message for all.
You are responsible for your own life. You are responsible for what happens to you. And the biggest principle that I live by is the fact that whatever you put out into the world comes back to you.
And that's what so many are crazed to hear in person.
Don't. It's unflattering.
5,000 women are taking part in Oprah Winfrey's Live Your Best Life tour at the Colorado Convention Center. It's a day-long interactive event in which women hear from Oprah herself motivational and esteem-building philosophies.
If you can figure out in your own life how that works for you, then you have the master plan for your own life. I'm going to the Oprah Winfrey Show! Oh, sweetheart.
The experience definitely became spiritual for this Michigan woman who begged in the window for tickets.
We get more tickets. We're going to Oprah.
And was finally promised passes to Oprah's show in Chicago.
Oh, God.
And one final note, mark your calendars. In June of 2006, the Oprah Show will be coming to CBS 4. In Denver, Arturo Santiago, CBS 4 News.
Well, Raj, crime scene investigators left here a few hours ago. Ever since then, there have been a handful of people coming and going from the house, although we're not quite exactly sure who they are. What we do know is that there were 6 people inside of the home at the time of the shooting, the mother and father and their 4 children. The children range in age from 23 years old all the way to 8 months old. Now, even though it was one of those children that was shot, the parents do have to answer some very serious questions. Crime scene investigators tear open an outside wall on the home right next to a car that had been clearly hit by bullets. On the street in front of the home are chalk outlines of where shell casings were found. Hayward police say at around 2 in the morning, several shots were fired at the house on the 27,000 block of Tampa. A 10-year-old girl was hit in the buttocks by one of the bullets.
We know that these cowards came out in the middle of the night and fired aimlessly at this home. We would love to have the public's help if they have any information.
The shooting has nearby neighbors worried for their own families.
Yeah, I have 3 kids and my mom, my dad, my family. It's so scary.
According to police, a family member of the victim didn't call 911 until just after 7:30 a.m. Detectives are trying to find out why there was such a long delay.
They did clearly state on the call that the family member was shot. And they did say that it happened a couple hours earlier, and we're trying to figure out how they knew it happened a couple hours earlier.
I have a daughter, and if that happened something to me, I will call the police right away. Like, I don't know how they didn't call the police right away.
As the investigation continues, neighbors are trying to get back to their everyday routines, some with a nagging thought.
It could happen to my house, anybody's house. And for a little girl to get hurt, that's horrible. Very horrible.
Police are also trying to determine if the shooting was random or if the home was targeted or if the home was mistakenly targeted. Live in Hayward, I'm Arturo Santiago, NBC Bay Area News.
NBC Bay Area's Arturo Santiago has the new details. He joins us live from Mountain View. Arturo.
Well, Jessica and Raj, officials here at NASA Ames are not saying much about Phil Luna. They do confirm that he works here at the research facility as the Director of Safety and Mission Assurance.
No one answered the door at Phil Luna's home on the 1200 block of Runnymede in San Jose, not after he opened a door in Polk County, Florida. The 52-year-old was caught in Operation Cyberchild. It was a sting operation that arrested 38 men who police say were using the internet to try to have sex with kids.
He is the one that brought the condoms and the candy, specifically Skittles, to teach an 11-year-old girl how to have sex.
Authorities in Florida say Luna responded to a Craigslist ad. and had a number of recorded phone calls with an undercover detective talking about having sex with the girl.
See, I can't picture him doing that. I really can't picture him because he's such a good father with all his children, and he helps around the house, and he does, I mean, he's always there for them.
Betty Jean Miller lives next door to the NASA Ames engineer. Is he a good neighbor?
He's a very good neighbor.
She and a number of others in the quiet suburb are now trying to come to grips with the allegations about someone they thought they knew.
Well, I'm in shock because I feel like, you know, he's always very pleasant.
Yes.
And saying good morning or good, how are you doing and how's everything?
Phil Luna was arrested 1 week ago on charges involving attempted sex with a child. He will be facing those charges in Florida. In the meantime, he's been placed on paid administrative leave here at NASA Ames. Live in Mountain View, I'm Arturo Santiago, NBC Bay Area News.
But you spoke to Mark Klass, and he thinks differently.
Yeah, Jessica, we also spoke with Mitzi Sanchez, who was abducted 13 years ago when she was only 8 years old. She escaped after being held captive in the trunk of a car for 2 days. Now, both Mitzi and Mark Klass agree on one thing. The families of the missing should never give up hope.
And when he grabbed me and put his arms around me and his hand around my mouth, I lost control of my bladder. I think my body went into shock. And my mind was scrambling. I had no idea what to do.
In the hours that Mitzi Sanchez was held captive by Curtis Anderson in August of 2000, she thought of her family, and she never thought she would be able to escape.
I knew I was going to die. I felt like I knew I wasn't going to make it out.
When it comes to both the case of the kidnapped women in Cleveland and her own abduction, Mitzi tells me the last thing she would have wanted was for anyone to give up hope.
There's people that are going to say they'll never be back. They're never going to come home. Friends of my family spoke those words to my mother, and they were wrong. Giving up hope is not an option.
Mark Klass, the father of Polly Klass, knows the anguish of being the parent of a missing child. He doesn't believe there's such a thing as false hope when it comes to believing you'll find a child that's been abducted.
Every child deserves to be brought home regardless of the circumstances of that child. Whether it's a child that's alive, like the 3 young women that were discovered in Cleveland last night, or a child that's dead like my own Polly.
He says finding those 3 women that have been missing for 10 years is a good sign for every parent searching for their missing children. Children like Sierra Lamar.
And I'm sure that her parents woke up this morning reinvigorated by the fact that these girls were found alive, therefore their girl may be found alive.
Mark Klass is the president of Klass Kids Foundation, and Mitzi Sanchez is now 20 years old, working and raising a daughter. Live in San Francisco, I'm Arturo Santiago, NBC Bay Area News.
Keep hope alive. Scientists believe that they've found what's known as the God particle, a subatomic rock that gives mass to all other particles in the universe. The Higgs boson is big news. NBC Bay Area's Arturo Santiago joins us live in Berkeley with more.
Well, the theory is that the Higgs boson particle is what gives everything in the universe its mass, even all the way back to the Big Bang. Now, it's been a theory for decades, but actually observing the particle has been impossible because the technology didn't exist until now. It's not a perfect analogy, but think of particles traveling through the universe as being motorcycles lane splitting through traffic. Their travel depends on the traffic around them that slows them down or speeds them up. The traffic conditions can be seen as the Higgs bosons, so the mass of particles depends on resistance from Higgs bosons. Marjorie Shapiro is a professor of physics at Cal Berkeley and associated with the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory.
And that amount of resistance depends on how much they interact with the Higgs particles that basically are always around in space, and when they interact with those particles, if they interact a lot, they get big mass. If they interact a little, they get small masses.
To find the Higgs boson, scientists used the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, Switzerland, to ram protons into each other. Massive amounts of data are generated, and in the data, researchers found all the telltale signs of the Higgs boson. So how does this complicated and meticulous research benefit mankind?
The physicists who invented quantum mechanics didn't think it had any useful applications, but if we didn't know about quantum mechanics, we wouldn't now have transistors. We wouldn't have any of these devices that we use that are incredibly useful.
The Higgs boson is the missing piece to explain why people, planets, and galaxies have mass, and important for the current understanding of how the universe works.
Understanding the set of fundamental particles and interactions that exist is really an essential part of being able to have a good model of how the Big Bang happened.
Now, scientists saw the first signs of the Higgs boson particle back in July. Their next step will be to see if there are different types of Higgs boson particles. We're live in Berkeley. I'm Arturo Santiago, NBC Bay Area.
NBC Bay Area's Arturo Santiago is right there with the crowd at NASA Ames. What's going on, Arturo?
Well, Diane, there's definitely a festival-like atmosphere here on the grounds of NASA Ames. There's music, there are food trucks and display booths, but most importantly, there are a couple of giant inflatable TV screens. This is what we'll be watching tonight as the Mars rover Curiosity makes its landing. And it's not going to be a routine landing. The procedure to land Curiosity is something that NASA has never done before. It's been dubbed the 7 minutes of terror. And that means it'll take 7 minutes from the time the spacecraft hits the top of the Mars atmosphere until it hits the ground. Now, in that 7 minutes, a supersonic parachute will be deployed, rockets will fire, and cables will lower the rover to the Mars surface, taking it from 32,200 miles an hour to 0. Now, this is actually a mission that's been decades in the making, and by that I mean scientists and engineers came up with a lot of the innovations involved decades ago.
And I've had the stamina, to spend a decade or more bringing that dream to fruition and actually packaging it up and sending it to Mars. And those are just the individual instruments. Then you have the sort of integration aspect of it with a team involving 250 scientists and a large number of engineers. Bringing all those things together to happen in the right place at the right time is a really amazing endeavor.
Now, we are expecting Curiosity to land at about 10:30 tonight, and by that time it will have traveled for 8 months, covering 350 million miles, all at a cost of $2.5 billion. And we'll be here right in front of the big screen, watching alongside thousands of people, and also the NASA Ames engineers and scientists who are so intimately involved in this project. Now, there are a couple of thousand people out here who pre-registered to watch on the grounds of NASA Ames. Unfortunately, the registration is now closed. However, you can still watch it streamed live on NASA's website. We're live in Mountain View. I'm Arturo Santiago, NBC Bay Area News.
All right, thank you.